Flying slowly and attempting to stay out of sight, Krillin, 18 and 16 would make it to West City. The trip took almost half an hour all told. They would draw a few strange looks from the city's residents as they made their way to Capsule Corp. 18 and Krillin seemed normal enough, but 16 had a hole in his head through which one could see wires. As they arrived, Bulma and Dr. Briefs both seemed shocked that he'd brought the androids here, though they calmed down somewhat as he explained the situation, but they'd reserve their trust for now. Even so, Dr. Briefs would set to work repairing 16, with Bulma informing them that she had to head to the lookout to deliver the imitation Saiyan armor she'd made. She would ask if they wanted to come, but 18 and Krillin thought it best to just lay low here. Chances are Cell knew about the lookout, so he'd check there eventually. He'd probably check here too, but at least this way they weren't out in the open any longer than they had to be. While Dr. Briefs worked on 16, Krillin and 18 would simply chat. They didn't really have anything better to do. Do you think we can get my brother back from Cell? Well, I don't know, but if all else fails, we could maybe try wishing him back with the Dragon Balls. Oh, but Kami fused with Piccolo, so they probably don't exist anymore. So he's really gone? Not necessarily. Provided we all survived this, we could take a trip to New Namek and use their Dragon Balls to bring him back. 18 seemed relieved by that, finally able to relax. She'd lean against Krillin, feeling much better since her brother could come back, even if they had to destroy Cell. Speaking of Cell, he was becoming increasingly worried that he wouldn't be able to find 18 before someone stronger than him showed up. He'd absorbed quite a number of people in addition to 17, so he was quite powerful, but he still wasn't comfortable. It wasn't ideal, but Cell decided that he had no choice but to force Goku into a confrontation while he could still beat him. And how better to get his attention than to threaten the life of his oldest friend, Bulma. So he would head to Capsule Corp. Bulma wasn't there, of course, but he'd hardly call it a wasted trip. 18, he'd finally found her, and with that his cocky attitude returned. He would land not far from 18 and Krillin, who immediately got up ready for a fight they couldn't win.
Come on, Krillin. If Piccolo couldn't beat me, you know you can't.
Krillin responded to this by rushing forward and kicking Cell in the neck as hard as he could. The Bugman just took the kick. He barely even felt it. He turned to Krillin with a smirk before punching him across the face, sending him flying into a nearby building. Up on the lookout, they'd sense Krillin's ki flare into life. He was in a fight. That's Krillin! Cell must have found them! Yamcha went to take off, but there was no need as Trunks and Vegeta exited the time chamber. Vegeta didn't really care what happened to Krillin, or if Cell got 18, so he stopped to change. Trunks, however, would power up to Super Saiyan and immediately take off in the direction of Cell, ripped clothing be damned. Future Gohan and Videl watched as Trunks passed them. He was on a whole other level now. The androids in the future wouldn't stand a chance. Goku and present Gohan would prepare to enter the chamber next, though before they could go in, Chi-Ji would give Gohan a hug, since from his perspective she wouldn't see him for an entire year. Her and Goku were far too reserved of people to kiss in public, so she'd settle for kissing him on the cheek. Cell would turn to approach 18, but would find his path blocked by Krillin's scatter bullet technique. It wouldn't hurt him, but the light did make it hard to see. When the dust cleared, 18 had already taken off in the opposite direction.
Still alive, Krillin. If you had any sense, you'd have stayed down.
He'd fire an energy blast towards Krillin, not giving it all really, just enough energy to kill the guy, but that's what he thought. Before he could turn to pursue 18, he would have to evade a volley of Destructo Discs from Krillin. If they did hit, he could just regenerate, but he didn't want to waste time. You won't get to 18, not while I'm alive.
Fine, have it your way.
Cell would take off towards Krillin. Krillin had of course been bluffing. He was running on empty. It was all he could manage to stand. He closed his eyes fully expecting to be killed, but when he opened them, he wasn't in line at Yema's place. No, he was alive. In front of him, he saw a figure he recognized as Trunks, as well as Cell doubled over in pain. Trunks removed his fist from Cell's stomach before kicking him halfway across the city.
Good job holding him off, Krillin. I'll make sure he doesn't get 18.
Trunks would kneel down, picking up a shot of glass from the building before using it to cut his hair so it wasn't in his face while he was fighting. Cell realized he was right. They were doing something to get stronger. There was no way he could beat Trunks. He was way stronger than Piccolo had been. He just had to find Android 18. If he could do that, then all his problems would be solved. 18 had the idea to hide in the subway. She'd at least have a little time before Cell would think to look underground. And she'd have been right, but unfortunately right now Cell was looking for a place to hide from Trunks, more than he was looking for her. So he'd blast a hole in the road before fleeing underground. Trunks chased after him and spotted 18 immediately, telling her to run. Not long after this, Vegeta would arrive, first going to meet Krillin. Are you here to help Trunks?
He hardly needs my help.
Vegeta scoffed. He doesn't feel like wasting his time against Cell when Trunks was already handling it. Cell, being a touch stronger here, was definitely still losing to Trunks, but he was able to inflict some damage when he managed to hit him, just not enough to seriously hurt him. Honestly, Cell was barely keeping up, but out of the corner of his eye he'd spot 18 fleeing to the surface, and another thing he saw was an oncoming train. This was the place for it, after all, being a subway. No way Future Boy was going to let those people die. He'd fire an energy blast towards the train, and as expected, Trunks rushed to intercept it, giving Cell the chance to pursue 18. Krillin would spot Cell in pursuit of her, but he didn't have the energy left for a fight like that. "What are you waiting for? Go help her!" Vegeta didn't move.
Why should I care if she gets absorbed? Let Cell attain his perfect form for all I care. I'm destroying both of them anyway, this just saves time.
Krillin, knowing he didn't have much chance to change Vegeta's mind, would take off towards Cell. He didn't have the energy to actually do anything, but he had to try. This monk had really been getting on Cell's nerves, so he would let loose an energy wave aimed towards Krillin. This one was definitely going to kill him. And it would have if 18 hadn't rushed to Krillin's aid, taking the blast for him. She fell to the ground barely alive, but still functional enough for Cell to use her. Cell would kick Krillin to the side before landing in front of 18, preparing to absorb her. Trunks would rush towards Cell, trying to stop him, but Cell caught him off guard with the solar flare, meaning that Cell was successful in absorbing 18, and once he transformed he had no issue dominating Trunks. Vegeta, who'd been happy to watch beforehand, finally decided to step in. This perfect Cell was worth fighting. Vegeta entered the fight with Cell, and for a moment it looked like he had the edge, but really this was Cell toying with him, allowing him to believe he could win before elbowing him in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Piccolo had nearly gotten the better of him earlier, so he wouldn't bait Vegeta into using the final flash. It wasn't worth it. Despite Vegeta telling him not to, Trunks would join the fight. Cell actually struggled somewhat against the both of them, but as he started to power up, he would quickly find himself on top again. Cell kneed Vegeta in the face before sending him to the ground with a double axe handle. He would then catch a kick from Trunks before breaking his leg. Cell would look over the two defeated Saiyans, feeling dissatisfied. He'd have liked the opportunity to test out his power properly, so he'd still come up with the idea of the Cell games. He wanted his fight with Goku, and if Trunks and Vegeta hadn't managed to surpass him, then he was sure Goku couldn't do it either. With that, Cell simply left, off to prepare for the Cell games. Krillin would recover first before lifting up Trunks and heading to Korin's tower. Hopefully he had some senzu beans. Vegeta would follow after them, and luckily Korin had a few ready, though this means they do have less during the Cell games. A few hours later, Cell would announce the Cell games live on TV, and not long after that, present Gohan and Goku would exit the time chamber. Chi-Chi was shocked by how different Gohan looked. She wouldn't have long to take it in, however, as future Gohan and Videl are up next. This version of Gohan was still her son, and he was about to spend a year alone with a young woman his age. She had to make sure they didn't get up to anything inappropriate in there, so she'd give Gohan and Videl a stern talking to before allowing them to enter. And as a result of her tirade, they were both too embarrassed to talk to each other for the first few hours in the chamber. Instead, they focused on sparring to keep their mind off it. Gohan would remain in his base form. He was still the stronger of the two, but like this, she could keep up with him. The two would trade blows for a short while, with the session ending when they both landed a punch on the other's face at the same time. Then they both chose to take a breather. Videl couldn't help but feel a little bad. Gohan couldn't really train his Super Saiyan form stuck with her as his sparring partner. She was skilled, sure, but even she couldn't make up for a power difference that big. Maybe someone like Piccolo would be better. Still, when she attempted to voice these concerns to Gohan, he wouldn't hear it. I can strengthen Super Saiyan by strengthening my base form. I'll just need maybe an hour or two a day and try to master it properly like my dad did. If the younger me can do it, I'm sure I can. You'd still make more progress with someone else though. Look, Videl, there's nobody I'd rather be in here with than you. Videl blushed slightly before turning away, telling him to focus on training Super Saiyan for the rest of the day, while she focused on refining her existing techniques. It was a bit of an excuse, but she actually had been working on a more efficient version of the Thundershock Surprise. It was pretty much instant, but not quite as strong, good for paralyzing enemies and affording herself some breathing room. Videl's concerns were mostly unfounded. Gohan was making solid progress, and they'd gotten much stronger together. They'd also grown much closer in this time. Both seemed hesitant to acknowledge it, though it was becoming harder to ignore. Ultimately, Gohan would bring it up first, just asking Videl straight how she felt about him. She was a little hesitant to answer the question, but she didn't want to lie to him. I think you're pretty amazing, Videl spoke after a brief pause. I think you already have an idea of how I feel about you, but you're right, I love you. Gohan was quiet for a moment before thrusting his fist into the air. Yes! He'd clench his fist above his chest. Yes. Gohan felt an immense wave of relief. Really, he just wanted to know one way or the other, though of course he was glad she reciprocated his feelings. With that tension out of the way, the two of them could finally get back to training in earnest. Videl was actually fairly close to catching up with Gohan, at least in his base form anyway. In a few of their sparring matches, she'd even managed to get the better of him, once catching him off guard with her version of the Thundershock surprise, which she had dubbed the Thundershock Flash. They may be a couple now, but that didn't mean they went any easier on each other while training. Anything less wouldn't do either of them much good. They also agreed not to do anything adult while inside the chamber. They didn't need Videl exiting the chamber rounder than when she went in, if you catch my meaning. When their time in the chamber came to an end, they had both improved significantly. Gohan didn't know for certain, but he was pretty sure he was around his father's level, if not a little stronger. Frustratingly though, he was still weaker than his past self. It was hard not to be disheartened by that. Still, that aside, he felt ready for the Cell games. If he was serious about fighting them all at one time, then Cell would run out of energy before beating the lot of them. And that's where we'll leave things for now. The group still have a few days to prepare for the Cell games, but how will things go different with two Gohans?
If you liked this video, maybe consider subscribing. Leave a comment and tell me your thoughts or suggestions for future what ifs, or just to say hi. But anyway, that's all from me. Have a good day.